the power of self-trust. And this is going to take us into journal prompt 23. How much do you trust yourself? And exercise 22, self-trust treasure hunt. All right. So when we're talking about trust, it's important to understand that there can be no in between. All right. Either you trust yourself or you don't. Because if you give yourself anything but complete trust, what is happening is you're undermining yourself. The fruits will be the same as if you just outright admit that you don't trust yourself. And a lot of us don't trust ourselves for so many reasons. But what I see most normally in my practice is when we were children tied to our childhood trauma. And that is why I really do focus on childhood trauma, because that's where a lot of things are rooted. We had a certain view of the world around us. Mom, I don't like this person, because you felt their energy. And then your mom said, no, that person's so nice. Stop it. You're being impolite. Well, slowly over time, you learn not to trust your view of the world. Mom, this happened to me and I'm so sad. Oh, you shouldn't be sad. Every time you were gaslit, and that's what it was, every time your view of the world was dismissed and instead another person's view was pushed, you learn to trust their voice, their view of the world, and to trust your own less. And this is really nefarious in childhood, because parents really do believe that they're guiding you well. But what they teach you to do is to not listen to yourself and not trust your eyes, your ears, your animal instinct, which is your spiritual intelligence, and instead to lean onto someone else's understanding. You don't know your own voice. By the time you become an adult, you will have forgotten what your own voice sounds like, and you will constantly be looking to someone else. Now, if your parents love you, then they didn't have bad intentions, it's still problematic. But sometimes parents do this simply so that they can control you, the caregivers around you, so that they can exploit you. Maybe someone who abused you try to convince you that the way you felt was wrong, the way you saw things were wrong, that things were your fault that wasn't your fault. And so you believe them and you stop trusting yourself as much. Now, I wish I could tell you how to start trusting yourself. It is just a choice. But what I will tell you is that you have to just trust yourself. And trusting yourself doesn't mean that you never make any mistakes. A lot of people are paralyzed by making any progress in their life because they're so afraid that they're going to screw up. They don't trust themselves, right? But trust, in my mind, is all about giving yourself permission to be human and understanding that mistakes will be made and that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay. That is what being human is. And that's how you grow into the person that you intend to be. You trust yourself, you make a mistake, you learn a lesson, you fortify that trust. But more to the point, there are so many people who I encounter who have suffered because they didn't trust their inner knowing, they didn't trust their intuition, they didn't trust that inner voice. And they use that as proof that they can't trust themselves, because look at how I keep making a mess of my life. But you keep making a mess not because you can't trust yourself, but because you don't trust yourself. You knew that person wasn't for you. You knew that job was going to be disastrous. You knew you shouldn't have gone to that party. You knew. You just didn't trust yourself. You are so used to other people diminishing your voice and your view that you have started doing it for them. They don't have to do it to you anymore. You're doing it for yourself, right? So you have to trust yourself, because if you aren't trusting yourself, you aren't leading yourself. And if you aren't leading yourself, who is? Who's leading you? Who's guiding you? Who do you look to for direction? Who do you look to tell you what to do? And the same people who don't trust themselves lack a sense of self in the extreme. So these people are normally always looking for fads. They don't have a sense of their own style. They don't feel like they can trust themselves. They don't have a sense of their own voice. They don't feel like they can. So they're always looking to someone else. How are you dressing? How are you acting? What are you doing? So that I can be safe. Again, that's what the ego wants. I can't be safe within myself because I don't know what the right things for me are. So I will make myself safe by mimicking you, by paying attention to what the collective is doing. And I will just follow behind them. But over time, you're going to feel very kind of depleted. Like, I'm not living for myself. I don't know who I am. If you don't know who you are, it will be very hard for you to trust yourself. If you don't trust yourself, it'll be very hard for you to know who you are. That's why you must just make the decision today to trust yourself, to tune more into that inner voice. I get a lot of clients who say, my connection with spirit is not what it was when I was younger. Yeah, because you don't trust yourself. When you don't trust yourself, you're constantly telling yourself, shut up. That's not right. You don't know what you're talking about. You're continuously diminishing yourself. So after a while of not being listened to, it stops talking. Your guide stopped talking. Your inner voice gets quiet, right? Because you have shut it up so much, because you have ignored it so much, because you have tuned it out so much that when you need to hear it, it's going to be harder for you to hear it. So you just have to tune into yourself. You have to give yourself permission to be human. You have to give yourself permission to be a mess at times. You have to give yourself permission to make mistakes so that you can grow and learn from them. Because inevitably, the things that we cling to, right? I'm too afraid to do this. I don't trust myself to do this. You suffer anyways, right? I don't trust myself to make a good decision, because if I make if I make the bad decision, then all these terrible things will happen. But you're normally living in those terrible things anyways, right? I don't trust myself to leave this relationship because I don't know if I'm making the right choice, and if I don't make the right choice, then this relationship will go away and it will hurt me and I will be alone. Okay. And I will sit with that person. I'm like, don't you feel alone now? Well, yeah, I feel so alone. I'm so depressed. So I don't understand what you're doing. You're worried about the outcome of a bad decision, but in worrying about an outcome of a bad decision so much so that you make no decision, you've made a bad decision. You're living in the outcome already. You're living in the outcome already. All right. So you need to trust yourself. If you feel like someone's energy is off, trust it. I would rather make a mistake with someone else than betray myself and deny my inner knowing. So if your energy feels off to me, I'm moving around. If I feel like your vibes are like this, I trust myself. I'm getting away from that. If I walk into a store and the energy is off, I'm probably going to turn around. I'm not going to participate in gaslighting myself the way that I was gaslit in childhood. I'm going to honor myself by loving myself enough to be obedient to myself, to listen to myself and not diminish that inner voice as it cries out to me. All right. So self trust is crazy important, especially if you seek to be a spiritualist, right? Like a lot of my clients do. If you seek to have more spiritual intelligence, if you seek to be able to maneuver through the world easier, right? Because my intuition is directly tied to my trust. My animal instincts, that is my spiritual intelligence, is intrinsically tied to my ability to trust myself. Right? So that's a foundational thing that you have to develop. And remember, love, trust, confidence, belief, these are things no one can take from you unless you let them. Unless you let them. Stop looking back on all the ways that you failed in the past as a reason, an excuse to continue to hurt yourself in the future. You're dragging your past failures into the future in an effort to keep yourself safe. I'm going to stop trusting myself. I'm going to make myself small. At least I know how to operate in that very limited space. But then you hate the limitations that you've imposed upon yourself. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. You deserve it. Trust yourself. And I would stay away from anyone who tries to convince you that you shouldn't, that you can't trust yourself, that you should instead lean on them. Oh, baby, you can't trust yourself. You know how your mind is. Listen to me. Follow my direction. Those are people seeking to exploit you always, without fail and without exception. Okay. Because the people who are for you will breathe life into you. They will encourage you. They will not want you to grow independence of anything outside of you. They would want to build you up internally. So be really cautious and cognizant of those people.